Hey everybody, Jake McCauley here. Thanks for the view. In this first video of my new YouTube channel, I'm going to provide a brief and simple introduction to the concept of anarchism. Anarchism is defined by dictionary.com as the belief that all existing governmental authority should be abolished and replaced by free cooperation among individuals. According to Wikipedia, anarchism holds the state, meaning the government, to be undesirable, unnecessary, or harmful. Now, the word anarchy comes from the Greek words an, which means without, and the word archos, which means rulers. Anarchy does not mean no rules. Anarchy means no rulers. As most anarchists will tell you, the whole foundation of the idea is the most basic rule of right and wrong, that rule being the non-aggression principle. The non-aggression principle is the idea that it's wrong to use force or threaten to use force against somebody else's body or property. Some examples of violating the non-aggression principle would be like murder, robbery, theft, assault, and kidnapping. The only kinds of violence that do not go against the non-aggression principle would be self-defense or defense of another. It goes against the non-aggression principle to punch somebody, but it does not go against the non-aggression principle to fight back if somebody punches you. It's a pretty straightforward idea. Now, part of the root of anarchism is the idea that all people are fundamentally equal and that no election or shiny badge or words written by politicians can give anybody the right to violate the non-aggression principle. Every government in the world violates the non-aggression principle every single day. That's how governments fund themselves, by forcing people to give them money. What government calls taxes, anarchists call robbery. What government calls arrest, anarchists call kidnapping. What government calls war, anarchists call mass murder. Using aggressive force against peaceful people is seen as equally wrong whether it was voted on or not. Democracy is, by definition, mob rule. According to anarchists, if 9 people vote to have one person murdered, that does not magically make it okay to murder that one person. Anarchists believe that all individuals are entitled to be self-owning and sovereign. Say Bob is sovereign. This means that as long as Bob is not using force against somebody else's body or property, then nobody has any right to try to control how Bob lives his life, and nobody has any right to steal Bob's money, no matter what the reason. Bob did not sign any social contract. He's not obligated to follow any rule other than the non-aggression principle. Now, if anybody tries to attack Bob or take his stuff, whether it's a burglar or a police officer, Bob has the moral right to use whatever force is necessary to defend himself and his stuff. Bob owns himself and his property, and nobody else can deny him that. Society is not the boss of Bob. Voters are not the boss of Bob. Men with badges are not the boss of Bob. Only Bob is the boss of Bob. That's what it means to be sovereign and self-owning. When you have a big group forcing you to give them a portion of your money or threatening to put you in a cage if you violate the rules that they invent, then you are being denied your right to self-ownership and robbed of your sovereignty. Anarchists believe that all people have the right to self-ownership and sovereignty. Now, one of the main arguments used to support having a government is that people can be evil and greedy creatures that can't be trusted to rule over their individual selves. Most anarchists believe that people can be evil and greedy creatures that can't be trusted to rule over everybody else. People become anarchists most often by realizing that governments tend to do way more harm than good. Human history has consistently proven, time after time, that the people in power will always use that power to force their own wills on other people, usually with the purpose of gaining more power. This can look like blatantly obvious evils like slavery, wars, and genocide, or it can take the form of more subtle and commonly accepted acts of aggression like taxation, imprisonment, economic manipulation, and punishing people for arbitrary and victimless crimes. These everyday actions governments take can be directly linked to most of the widespread violence, poverty, war, and overall struggling that still plagues mankind. Now, aside from most of history's horrors, one could assert that most of the problems this world has nowadays are the direct result of government. Some basic examples of this would be things like poverty caused by regulations and taxes, which have the main effect of crushing small business and limiting the job market. And when you limit the job market, you force workers to have to settle for low wages. Low wages create poverty. Widespread poverty, combined with things like the war on drugs, have created a culture of violent crime that we can see all around us. In the U.S., there's a lot more money to be made locking 2.2 million people in cages than there is in just leaving people alone. Many anarchists believe that most or all of the things that government does are just done to make money, just like any other business, with the difference being that government does it by force. Money runs this world. Anarchists just want force to be taken out of the equation. Now, to most people, a concept like anarchism begs the obvious question: without government, who will protect me from bad guys? Who will build the roads? Who will put out the fires? Who will educate the children? I'm glad you asked. Just the mention of the word anarchy seems to summon an ever-present stigma that without men in chairs writing more and more reasons to put people in cages, everybody would run around killing each other, cities would be on fire, and the world as we know it would collapse around us. Government meets, or at least claims to meet, the demand for things like education, security, and infrastructure. One of the most important things to remember when it comes to things like political science and economics is that wherever there is a demand for something, such as people wanting schools, there's not going to be any shortage of people trying to meet that demand and build those schools in order to make the most money. Pretty much everybody wants to make as much money as possible. As long as people still need firefighters, there will still be firefighters because there's money in it. Nothing is free. You're paying for the services provided to you, whether it's by the handshake of voluntary business or the gunpoint of taxes. You can either be a customer or a slave. Most anarchists agree that any helpful service currently offered by government, such as firefighting, protection from murderers, parks, roads, and education, would be handled better by competing businesses. The reason for this being that when these services are offered by government, everybody gets forced to give the state as much money as the politicians decide whether we're satisfied with the service or not. If the government didn't offer these services, that leaves the markets for them open to average Joes starting regular businesses. Instead of using force, regular businesses tend to make their money honestly by attracting and satisfying as many customers as possible. You get the most customers by offering the best and most affordable versions of those services. The quality goes up, the workers' wages go up, and the prices go down when there are more businesses competing with each other. So, in a nutshell, if I point a gun in your face and steal your money, and then I hand you a bagel, chances are that you're going to be losing more money and getting a lower quality bagel than you would by just going to one of many bagel shops. If I can just take all the money I want from you by force, I have no reason to keep it affordable or to give you a bagel you'll actually like. If I don't use force, then I have to offer a good enough bagel at a low enough price that you'll be willing to give me your money. Now, one may be curious as to how this would all actually pan out and what it would really look like. According to anarchists, anarchy looks like affordable private schools that cost the parents way less than they currently pay in taxes to fund the public brainwashing centers. Anarchy looks like security companies and gun stores providing society with all the protection necessary to deter robbers, rapists, killers, thieves, etc. And instead of running around harassing and kidnapping people like cops are paid to do, private security companies and gun stores offer crime prevention that actually works. Contrary to how the word is commonly used, most anarchists agree that anarchy is prone to be more peaceful, while statism systematically breeds violence. Anarchy looks like small businesses competing everywhere, instead of a handful of major corporations using government to dominate the economy by writing the regulations and tax codes necessary to suppress the little guy and prevent competition. So this equates to less big business like McDonald's and more small businesses like Bob's Burgers. Now, despite all the potential negative effects of government and the potential positive effects of anarchy, your average anarchist aligns with the ideology not because of any foreseen outcome, but because of the underlying concept that being born in a particular place is not the same as signing some social contract to obey certain people that claim to be the leaders of that particular place. Anarchism is, above all else, the the belief that violence is bad and should be avoided, and that all people are entitled to be their own masters. Thank you for watching, and have a free day.